I'm sure you see that title and think I'm crazy. And, well, I probably am. But I believe in every way that matters, Paper Mario The Thousand Year Door is the Dark Souls of Nintendo. And if future entries are designed right, it'll be even harder than Dark Souls. Now, where do we even start? How did I come up with this whole conviction? Well, it all starts off at the end of Chapter 1 in Paper Mario The Thousand Year Door, where you unlock access to the Pit of 100 Trials. Now, as to not spoil the game for all those new players out there, I won't say any of its rewards or types of enemies inside, but I will say, this is not a place you want to be that early in the game. The first dozen floors are difficult, but completely possible if you're deft at the game. But even as low as floor 30, you'll be seriously struggling, and if you're still down there at level 80, the only way you're surviving is by perfectly dodging every single enemy, because one wrong move will leave you paralyzed from the waist down. This sounds infuriating, right? Well, it absolutely is. But when you finally beat it, oh boy is it rewarding. And that's what a Souls-like is all about. Do you really think people like dying over and over against John Elden, the final boss of Elden Ring? No. But the pure euphoria you feel when conquering him after 8 hours is exhilarating. I'll be the first to say, this is exactly what Paper Mario needs right now. But what about what you need right now? Like a nice medium rare steak, or $1 billion, or an education to help you get your dream job? Well, today's sponsor, Southern New Hampshire University, could help you with at least one of those things, because I'm here to talk about their degree in game development and design. See, at SNHU, you'll learn everything you need about the 3 foundational languages of game development: C#, C++, and if you're feeling frisky enough, Java. Ooh. Continuing on, you'll learn how to use software like Blender to take the Lovecraftian horrors that fester in your mind and bring them to reality. But without physics and character learning algorithms, your projects would be meaningless. So it's great that SNHU has extensive lessons in all that as well. So, if you're interested in this or want to check out any of SNHU's other degrees available, go to snhu.edu/arctic. or visit the link in the description to help support this channel and get free information. Thanks again, SNHU, for sponsoring us today. Now, let's make sure everyone's on the same page right now. What is a Souls-like? Traditionally, it's an adventure game with an emphasis on its combat, but most importantly, it's difficult. Difficult beyond all reasonable comprehension. But that's exactly why people love them so much. And it's not that they like the suffering, at least not for most people, but it's the method of learning all the ins and outs of every boss, the patterns of their attacks, and when to dodge. So once you finally know all of that, it's simple muscle memory to defeat them. That and several hours of failing beforehand. If you played the game right, a boss that took 100 tries the first time to defeat should only take 50, and each subsequent attempt will get substantially easier. Of course, that sounds like most boss fights in video games, but I believe it's different, simply due to how Souls games structure their fights. Whereas most other games put their gameplay focus in something else, the platforming, puzzle solving, or whatever this is, Dark Souls places their entire focus on the boss fights. Of course, you explore the world between each encounter, but that's only for you to gear up and prepare for the fights ahead. And in case you haven't noticed, this sounds a whole lot like Paper Mario, and in particular, Paper Mario The Thousand Year Door. While the gameplay is nowhere near the same as anything from FromSoft, Paper Mario is all about learning the exact moment to dodge and finding the perfect attacks to defeat any enemy. I believe the games after the original Thousand Year Door lost sight of this philosophy, and that's exactly why future entries in the franchise need to lean into this tenfold. But that's when the first problem comes to mind. If you make Paper Mario a frame-perfect dodge, rage-inducing Souls-like, it will become the most inaccessible Mario game possible. Well, to counter that, I raised one Hotel Mario. But I don't necessarily believe the entire franchise should become a Souls-like. Paper Mario has been in such a painfully precarious position for over a decade. When Super Paper Mario was supposed to be a one-off experiment, it unraveled into unplayable garbage to beautifully but infuriating mechanics to a decent game but held back in the dumbest ways. Now, with the return of Thousand Year Door, it finally seems like they're understanding why the games were so great in the first place. And with all that, I simply can't stand to see them ruin the franchise with some misunderstanding with the fanbase for something new. But I can also say that sometimes change is necessary. But, not like that. So how do we make the game difficult, but enjoyable, without completely changing it as a whole? It's a tough question. Perhaps just add an optional difficulty. Nintendo games have desperately needed difficulty options as far back as the SNES. But I think something like Paper Mario would be a great place to implement it. Easy/normal mode is the casual modes where everyone deals reasonable damage with decently wide parry windows. But on harder difficulties, the damage and health should increase much more, and the parry window should be near frame perfect-ish. This keeps the game accessible, but leaves room for those who ache for a Nintendo Souls-like. But that's part of the problem. If we want Paper Mario to go full Souls-like, it can't just be an optional difficulty mode. So this whole thing must just be a fever dream of mine. Paper Mario will never be Souls-like. You're telling me Paper Mario can be Souls-like? How? Well, it all comes back to what I talked about in the beginning. The Pit of 100 Trials. This entirely optional challenge is available the moment you finish the first major section of the game. You are entirely free to suffer for 12 hours if you'd like, or ignore it until you're more powerful. But if you do challenge it right away and stick with it until the very end, the next 5 hours of the regular game becomes far easier. I think we need fights like this available throughout the whole game as a way to encourage weak players to leave their comfort zone for the sake of unlocking some powerful badge, and as a way to challenge experienced players without needing to get through 8 hours of early game just to get to the part that will finally challenge them. Now, I don't really want it to be obvious combat areas like the pit, since that's only something you can pull out like once per game. What I think would be perfect is encounters like at the beginning of the Thousand Year Door. Throughout the game, the east side of Rogueport is blocked by Gus, and the only way to get past him is either pay 10 coins, which you will have to do every time if you want to pass through, or you can deny him and fight. Well, surely fighting him is no big deal. I mean, the game just started. They're not going to give us something that hard. Gus has 20 health. And to put that in context, the first boss of this game has 30, and most enemies only have 2. Give us impossibly hard encounters like this, and I'll be happy. Another problem appears with how frequently these encounters should happen. If it happens too much, then it might feel like you're missing too much if you don't engage with them. Or if you do, you'll become too powerful. But if it's as frequent as Gus is, let's say once per chapter, then there's hardly any difficult encounters at all in the grand scheme of the game. So I propose a happy medium between too little and too many with an optional difficulty. If we had 3 to 5 uniquely difficult enemies per chapter that lock a special item or area early in the game, that would be excellent. But like I said earlier, Nintendo games have really struggled lately with being far too easy. Think of Princess Peach Showtime. Of course, most of these are kids games, but I would argue that even then, we should still have the choice to make the game easier or more difficult than initially designed, because it simply makes more games accessible. And for high-level Princess Peach Showtime speedrunners such as myself, it keeps things fresh and lets us innovate in new strategies. If Paper Mario was the first to indulge in this mechanic, I would be ecstatic, because more options simply means more fun for everyone. But you know what? If you disagree and think a Dark Souls Paper Mario will send us back down the sticker star path of life, then please let me know. But until then, pet all good puppies, and keep cool. Bye.